whether it's through our upbringing, through our nature, I don't know what it is. We just both realize the value in reinvesting in your business.
Welcome to a special edition episode of the Game Changing Attorney Podcast featuring David Laborde and Digger Earles, co-founders of one of the largest law firms in Louisiana, Laborde Earles Injury Lawyers.
Where are we going with this? People talk about growth for the sake of growth, and I think there's tremendous value in that. But there has to be something in mind, whether it's a succession plan or an end game or whatever it is. Not there yet, not really ready to have that conversation.
I'm Michael Mogul, founder and CEO of CRISP, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. CRISP started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. I sat down with David and Digger to discuss how to balance strengths and personality styles as co-founding leaders, how to build a brand as the hometown hero and the most beloved law firm in your community, and how to build a team of winners, not whiners.
We want to win at all costs, and we don't want to cry over it. We don't want to cry about the bumpy road to get there. We want to win. We want to do an excellent job for our clients while taking care of our team members.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney Podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. Digger and David, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Man, this has been overdue. This has been a long time coming. I'm very excited to do this. We got a lot of exciting things to talk about. For anyone listening who may not be familiar with you guys in the firm, I mean, just when I think of Louisiana, I think Laborde Earles. We'll get to the origination story of the firm, but what was it like just early upbringing, growing up in Louisiana? I know you guys are very tied in just to the culture and just have very strong roots there.
Digger and I both grew up in rural central Louisiana. Digger, he'll tell you a little more, but grew up essentially on a farm. My dad was a lawyer and a politician, so we grew up in the same community, kind of a different background. I was always exposed to my dad and his small family practice. Generally, growing up in small town, rural Louisiana, you don't have exposure to a whole lot. When I was about 9 years old, my family moved to Europe, and that was eye-opening and life-changing. So we spent 3 years in Spain, learned to speak Spanish, came back to Louisiana, and never left after that.
Yeah. Digger, what about you?
So the only lawyer I knew growing up was David's dad. I come from a family of farmers in, again, rural Louisiana. I watched my dad wake up before the sun came up and come home after the sun went down every day. And I never knew if we were praying for rain or praying for it to stop raining. So I decided that wasn't for me. Always looked up to David, his dad, and just seemed like a natural progression, something I wanted to do. So that's why I went to law school.
So it's interesting because you guys have very different upbringings, but I'm almost embarrassed to admit, because it took me a number of years after we first met. I was like, how did you guys meet? And there's a relationship here.
Yeah.
So actually, Digger's mom is my first cousin. I'm 10 years older than Digger, and he was just a little kid when I was growing up. And it wasn't until we were both lawyers, actually, that we first worked together and realized the value of working with someone that you like to work with, that you got along with, that was similarly aligned in values and work ethic. And that's kind of how it evolved to the partnership that we formed.
Yeah, I used to go to David's office whenever I was in town, just stop in to visit, and just always enjoyed visiting with him. He was just such a welcoming and just good person. And then this project came up. I stopped in to visit one day, and he asked me what I was working on, and I told him, and we ended up joining forces in that and worked so well together that we said, look, we can do this together and instead of apart and really build something special. So we did, and the rest is history.
I know you guys have a very different story. What led each of you to the practice of law?
Like I said, my dad was a lawyer and later a judge. That's the only exposure I ever had to a profession. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and so I was always in and out of his office, in and out of his office as a judge as well, and really enjoyed that. At some point in time, I decided I wanted to be a doctor, and started school with that path in mind. And then I got to organic chemistry, and I said, well, maybe this isn't for me. Pivoted, refocused, and decided I would go to law school. It was quite by happenstance, to be honest with you.
Man, I had the same experience at organic chemistry, but I was just too stubborn. I made it all the way through, took the MCAT, got into medical school before I decided I didn't want to go. So you actually were the smart one there. What about you, Digger?
For me, it was a little different. Everyone in my family for generations have been farmers in Louisiana, literally the same property. And I think it's just expected in my family that you grow up and you become a farmer and you do what everyone else before you had done. My brother's a farmer, my father's a farmer, my son is a farmer with my dad and my brother. And so I graduated from college, went back home to be a farmer, and just quickly realized that just wasn't for me. I didn't have that burning passion to be out in the fields the way my other family members were. So I looked for other opportunities. As I said earlier, I always looked up to David and his dad and respected what they did and who they were, and actually went visit with David's dad before I applied for law school. And I'll never forget it. He told me, he says, why do you want to go to law school? I said, well, because I don't want to be a farmer. He says, you want to go to law school because you think you're going to make a lot of money? And I said, maybe so. He said, you know what the average starting salary is for a lawyer? I said, 100,000. He said, 30,000. And that was very eye-opening to me. Nonetheless, I went forward and couldn't imagine at that meeting that day where that path would lead to, partnering with David and being involved with everything his family was doing and our families being so intertwined.
So what was, I know you hinted at it, but like if you could speak to that project that you two collaborated on before joining forces, because this, it wasn't a small project.
Yeah, no. So the Deepwater Horizon BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico literally shut down the Gulf of Mexico, all the fisheries, the shrimping, the seafood industry, and the ripple effect that it had on the Gulf states really affected businesses. And David and I teamed up and got involved in that litigation and did well, worked well together and did really well for our clients and really well for us as a firm. We took that experience in that case and literally reinvested every single dime back into our business, into our firm and growing our firm.
And I'm curious, what's kind of like, if you could describe for people listening who may not be familiar with you guys, like the dynamic between the two of you, right? Because working with family, it's not for everyone, right? You guys, I mean, I'm continually impressed if it's just how complementary you guys are with one another, right? I don't know if you guys have ever had an argument. I'm sure you have, but it just seems like you guys are always aligned. But if you're not aligned, you guys can make a decision, move forward quickly.
Yeah, I think it starts from a mutual respect for one another. We come from different backgrounds. We have very different opinions. We have very different personalities. But I don't know if we've ever had an argument. I know we've had disagreements on different decisions, but I tell people all the time, we always work it out. If I'm asked a question and he's asked a question and we have different opinions, we get in the room with each other in 5 seconds. We have an agreement. So, and I really think that comes from a deep mutual respect for one another, and we care about each other's opinions and we care about doing the right thing, and we can always hash it out and work it out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one of the things that we've learned through those disagreements, and there are disagreements obviously in any relationship, is we've learned not to voice our opinion in front of third parties until we have the discussion in private. If there's any hint that there might be some disagreement among us, pretty mindful of not voicing my opinion until Digger and I get behind closed doors, express our opinions. If there's a disagreement, then we hash it out. If there isn't, then we make that opinion known. So I think just having that mutual respect for one another and that working relationship, we generally end up completely aligned on everything. Not to say that there aren't still disagreements from time to time, but there've been quite a few. But we've always been very civil in how we've addressed them and worked them out.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's like united front. That's probably the best way I can describe the two of you. It's like united.
Well, it's from trial and error. Not to say that we did that initially, because both of us have opened our mouth contrary to the other's opinion in front of other people. Then you have to go back and someone has to eat their words, and so it makes it difficult.
How would you describe each of your leadership styles? And just I know I mentioned you guys seem like very complementary skill sets, but David, how would you describe what you do versus Digger's approach?
I think I'm much more analytical. I spend a lot more time thinking about something and analyzing the pros and cons to a fault sometimes, where Digger's just a decision maker. He'll see something and he has an instinct for liking something or not liking it. And to his credit, he's right about 99% of the time. I usually get there sometimes later than he does, But looking back on the decisions that we've made and how we've come about making those decisions, I really respect his decision making.
99% of the time? That's pretty good.
I shouldn't have said that, by the way. But
Did you expect anything less, Michael?
No, I was going to say, I'm not going to argue that. What about your perspective there?
Well, do you see why we get along? I mean, I would describe David as calm, cool, and collected. I definitely see myself as more as an instinctful decision maker, just as David put it. And I don't really know how to describe it. I have a gut feeling and an instinct, and I just voice my opinion. And as he said, much to his fault, waiting so long, much to my fault, those impulse decisions don't always work out. So, and they have come back to bite us in the butt. But it may not be the right system, but it's our system, and it's worked well for us so far. So,
yeah. So, like, if I guess looking back, David, would it be fair to say firm is almost approaching, if not like 30 years?
Yeah, I've actually been practicing a little more than 30 years. I started out by myself right out of law school. I clerked for a year for a federal judge for 1 year and figured I was broke and married and had nothing to lose. And a buddy of mine encouraged me to come and share some office space with him. And I was in a deficit for quite a few years, but managed to keep my head above water. And then my dad retired from being a judge, and he and I practiced together for 20 years. And, that was a wonderful experience. We grew our firm from he and I to maybe 6 or 7 lawyers by the time he retired. And that's about the same time that Digger and I got together and really focused on building a business. And the firm's grown quite a bit since then. Again, not to say that there haven't been a lot of difficult times and a lot of bumps and bruises along the way, but we've managed to grow the firm to where it is today.
So I'm curious about that, like from the early days of the firm, just with the two of you guys, like when you joined forces, what were some of the challenges early on? Like just how has that kind of evolved? Either mistakes that you learned from, or great decisions that you made. Like what were some of the lessons?
For me, when we decided to do this, David had been doing his thing for quite some time, and then I was working with another law firm in another part of the state. Really wasn't having a good experience where I was, and I'll never forget the guy I was working with, which would tell me almost weekly how times had changed and it was impossible for young lawyers to go out and start on their own business and do what they have done. Looking back, even John Morgan said it best: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Took that leap with David, and it's been a bumpy road, but we were both committed to investing every single dime back into our business and bettering us and bettering our businesses, and it's just worked.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, I mean, I guess reinvesting into the firm, again, hindsight is 20/20, right? Every successful firm that I speak with, that they were constantly reinvesting, but not everybody does. Like, was that a mindset you guys had from the very beginning, or was it something that you had to adopt once you saw that this was working?
It was 2014, and we were in the middle of the BP litigation, like Digger said, and we're starting to realize the fruits of that labor. It was a good endeavor, and we recognized that we had some cash available and set a budget, said, if we can put this money into a new practice and start marketing, which we had never done on our own, we should start realizing some revenue and some profit in a year or two. Well, fast forward 7 or 8 years later, we still hadn't taken a dime out of the practice because everything we put in it, we put back in. And it literally wasn't until 8 or 9 years, that we started really seeing an opportunity to reap the rewards of the money and effort that we'd put into the practice. So it's been a long, slow haul, but it's been worth it.
I want to dig into that even more in the sense that 7 or 8 years of just reinvesting, not really taking anything out. Most lawyers and law firms, they'd buy themselves something nice, right? They would have either upgraded, got a nice car or a nice home or something like that. Did you guys always have just kind of like a long-term outlook and just always everything was about tomorrow, or perhaps were there some lessons learned along the way that made that a good decision to always be looking ahead to the future years?
I think it's what I said earlier on. We have a similar mindset. I drive an old pickup truck. It's not an old. The truck I have right now is 2 years old, but I'll drive it until it's 5 or 6 years old. Digger does the same. Just the way we're wired. There's no reason to go out and buy a bunch of nice things when, in the end they don't bring you a whole lot of reward. And so, whether it's through our upbringing, through our nature, I don't know what it is. We've just both realized the value in reinvesting in your business. One day, I still don't know when that day is, ultimately cashing out or reaping the rewards from what you've done. It's on my mind, like, where are we going with this? People talk about growth for the sake of growth, and I think there's tremendous value in that. But there has to be something in mind, whether it's a succession plan or an end game or whatever it is. not there yet, not really ready to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And for me, I always looked at it as there's no one I'd rather bet on than myself. I want to bet on me. I don't want to put my money in the stock market depending on some CEO that I've never met or don't know to make a decision that affects me financially. I'd rather put my money and bet on me and bet on David. Seems to be the right plan of action so far.
Yeah, and you guys are obviously in a very, very competitive market. And just in Louisiana, there's a lot of just big advertisers, especially when you started the firm. What did it look like in terms of how did you approach, case acquisition early on versus now? Like how has that evolved?
Well, we've come a long ways, Michael. Neither David or I really care for advertising. When we sat down and figured out how we were going to tackle this, we quickly saw that the cases that we used to just get because we were good lawyers were dwindling away. And all the good cases weren't necessarily going to the best lawyers, but to the best marketers. And so we knew we had to start marketing. We learned a lot, and it was very expensive to learn some of those lessons. We wasted a lot of money on web vendors, and we didn't really speak that language. We knew what SEO was or what it stood for. That's about it. And we learned some very valuable lessons from dealing with some not so great vendors along the way. We learned to treat a law practice like a business rather than a law practice. And before that time, we just thought that cases come in, you do a good job, you make a nice fee, and you just move on and work on the next case. Now we've learned so much. We track every data point you can imagine on time, from time on desk to average fee to wanted case conversions to just metrics I'd never dreamed of before. Now they're an integral part of my daily routine. Throughout the day, checking those numbers.
For someone who's listening, because I bet they're curious, they haven't made the mistakes yet. Like, what were some of those lessons that you learned, whether it was bad marketing investment or working with the wrong vendor? If you could go back, like what would you have done differently?
I'll tell you, one thing that I really attribute a lot of our success to is going to legal conferences and spending time educating yourself on the vendors that are there and what they bring. We met you at a conference. You quickly realize you separate the good from the bad, or the average from the greats. The best advice I could give to my former self would spend some time, get out of your comfort zone, get out of your local markets and expand your horizons. Go to some conferences and meet some lawyers around the country that do what you do. Meet some vendors that have services that you weren't aware of that could really provide value and maybe make your life easier or more effective or efficient.
Yeah. David, any thoughts?
No, I agree with that. Speaking for myself, traditionally, I went to the local CLE at the local bar association or the state bar association and learned how to take a deposition or how to do a direct examination. And those are valuable, but exposing yourself to other practices and other people and other opportunities around the country is invaluable. And I'll never forget the first time we went somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's when we met you. It was in Las Vegas, and it was eye-opening, and it transformed our practice. The biggest advice I would have given, as Digger said, to my former self is don't be impressed with everything you see, because there's so many snake oil salesmen out there. Vet the vendors that you're dealing with, get recommendations from some of their past clients, and believe about 30% of what they tell you, because they'll take your money in a heartbeat and they're done. There are some great vendors out there and people that you should deal with, and there's some you should shy away from.
Yeah, agreed. I'm curious, so I know both of you guys are very big on family. You love your kids, you spend a lot of time with your kids. How did you, especially early on, building the practice, there's obviously a lot of sacrifices that take place during that time. How did you balance building the business with also being present with the family?
Long hours.
long hours. I have 5 kids. When you're in the middle of it, you don't realize what's going on. But I can remember many nights of coming home, going to baseball games, going to horseback riding lessons, going to whatever the event might be, putting everyone to bed after dinner, helping my wife tidy up the house, and then starting my work to prepare for the next day, and staying up till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning to get prepared for a deposition the next day or a trial that's coming up the following week. And that's just the grind that you go through. Not conscious of what's going on, but if you're going to do what you have to do to succeed, those are the sacrifices you make. And they're not really sacrifices. I look back on them as really fond times, and I wouldn't trade any of it for anything.
You're right, because I got to even stop using that word, because as I think about it more, I know we look at some of these trade-offs as sacrifices and long hours, but they're really investments, right? Because what you were doing then is, obviously, paid off into the future. So it's like when you're doing the longer hours or getting a little bit less sleep, that's kind of an investment in the future.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. What about you? What about you, Digger? Speak to I guess, the personal investments, right? Of just balancing, the firm and growing that with also spending time with your family.
Yeah, family's incredibly important to both of us. I certainly appreciate the time that we were able to spend with our kids as they were growing up. Both David and our kids are getting older now. They're leaving the nest, and now it's time for grandkids. David has a couple grandkids, and I have one on the way. So it's just a different part of our lives now. But as David said, I don't regret any part of it. It was long hours. It was a lot of work, but I definitely, as you put it, see it as an investment, because the fruits of those labors are paying off now. I had a great relationship with my children. I think they've grown up to be, fine young adults. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but it seemed to work out okay.
Yeah. And I don't want you to think the hours have necessarily stopped.
Yeah.
Particularly in Digger's case. I get text messages at 3 a.m, 2 a.m, phone calls at 6 a.m, one this week, in fact. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And he said, I just thought of something I wanted to tell you before I forgot. And so we're just both constantly thinking about and working on our business, and it's fun.
How would you describe what makes the firm different? Clients have almost like an endless option of law firms that they could, basically take their case to, but you guys have a very unique value proposition. You differentiate yourself, even from, a lot of the larger advertisers. It's like your firm has a distinct identity. How would you describe that?
Yeah, I think we've embraced who we really are. We don't try to pretend that we're something we aren't. We're just guys from rural Louisiana that now are in the practice of law, and we never lost sight of who we really are. And we treat our team members that way, and we treat our clients that way. Our goal is to do an excellent job for our clients while taking care of our teammates during that process. We're really big on community. Lawyers get a bad rap of being greedy lawyers or take, and we really wanted to reverse that script and give back to the communities that's been so good to us. So one of our core values is community. We take it very seriously. We take every opportunity we can to give back. We sponsor local festivals, local charities, backpack giveaways, bicycle giveaways. I mean, any opportunity we see or is brought to us to be involved in our community, we jump at it. And we do that not just in the communities we live, but in every community that we serve throughout Louisiana.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I think doing those things that, being real and being genuine fosters a great culture. And, I think of myself 20 years ago running a small practice, culture wasn't even a thought in my mind. Community wasn't a thought in my mind. All I wanted to know is how much money can I make this month to pay this month's bills and hopefully get to the next month. And then through an evolution of thinking about the firm as a business and learning how to run an actual business, those things have kind of settled into the background. And it's more important for us to foster a good culture, to foster a good work environment, to do things that are good for our staff, our families, and our communities. And it all just seems to work itself out in the end. And so it's kind of a different way of approaching the practice of law. I was taught to be a good lawyer and how to try a case and how to take a deposition, but no one ever taught us how to run a business. And to brag on you, a lot of what we've learned is through the partnership with your business.
Well, thank you. And this probably doesn't apply to many listeners of this podcast. When we talk about running the practice like a business, I mean, it really comes down to, if you want to impact more people, you want to serve more people, it's a necessity. I mean, how else would you do it? And I'd love for you guys to speak to I know client experience is very important for you. How have you been able to scale that client experience as the firm has grown, right? Because it's a lot easier when you only have, a few clients or a few cases and providing them with great service. But then as that number starts to grow exponentially, that's where it becomes challenging. How have you guys approached that?
One of the toughest lessons that we learned, one of the hardest fought, toughest lessons we learned is delegation. That was very difficult for me in particular to embrace. And once we finally did understand the power of delegating certain tasks to certain people that you trust, things just started to fall into place.
Just hiring really talented people and like Digger said, trusting them with the investment that you've made in them and the authority that you've given them and the tasks that they have, and watching them perform their duties better than you could ever dream of doing it yourself has been a really pleasant experience for me. I never would have thought that we would have a team of people dedicated to nothing more than, like you said, the client experience.
Yeah.
Everything from answering the phone to how they speak to clients on the phone, how often they return their phone calls, how they follow up with clients once they're no longer clients, and how many times we touch them during the time that they are our clients. Those things are transformational in your business because they keep the client happy, and happy clients bring new clients to you. And by far, those are the best clients that you ever get, are the ones that come to you via referral.
Absolutely. And I know you guys obsess over the client experience. You've mapped out every single step of the client journey and every touch point that somebody could have. And like, how do you make sure that someone has a great experience? Could you speak to the happy meter?
That's a digger meter.
We use Litify, was based on the Salesforce platform. Happy clients equal happy customers, happy clients, happy customers equal more referrals. And by far, far and away, our greatest referral source is former clients and friends and family of former clients. So we looked for ways to enhance the customer experience to make sure we had a happy client. So we use this tool built into our Salesforce platform that we call the Happy Meter. And what it does, it routinely sends out text messages to clients and says, rate the job my paralegal is doing, rate the job my attorney's doing, 1 through 10. And if it's anything less than a 9, red flags go up and squeaky wheel gets the grease. So that client gets a call immediately from the paralegal, from the lawyer, want to know exactly what the issue is.
Yep.
Well, and a lot of times they say, well, we gave you a 9. I'm like, well, we want a 10.
Yeah.
We want to deliver A+ white glove service to you and nothing short of that.
I love it. And I was looking at the core values, and these are great, right? All in, work hard, play hard, honorable, cutting edge, community, winners, not whiners. What does that one mean?
We want to win at all cost, and we don't want to cry over it. We don't want to cry about the bumpy road to get there. We want to win, and we want to do an excellent job for our clients while taking care of our team members. That one fit. Winners, not whiners.
It's like, so I know for many firms, they have the core values. It's like a poster on the wall, and that's it. They say, here are our core values, but then abiding by these things and living and breathing and just ultimately hiring and firing. I know these are real with you guys. I remember when we went duck hunting, and in that same day, talking about the work hard, play hard, right? We went duck hunting in the morning, and then by that afternoon, Digger, you were set up in the war room preparing for a case, and you were reviewing medical records, and I'm like, whoa, just like an hour ago, we were duck hunting, and Digger's dialed in, and that's just amazing you've been able to strike that balance, even in the same day. Yeah,
well, one core value that's not on there, but we live by is get shit done. So that day we had a trial starting the following week. And although I love and have a passion for hunting and fishing and loved having you as a guest with us to experience that with us, we had stuff to do. So
and we tried that case and had a big victory.
Yeah.
I remember the trial very well.
It was amazing because, Digger, I knew you guys obviously for years previously, and we always talked about the business, and you were also telling me you're obviously very passionate about trying cases and and serving your clients. But then just to see that in the same day, like to see like all those dynamics taking place, and then obviously meeting a number of members of your team, and people seem super engaged. You guys have a beautiful office. So let's talk about that. What kind of the thought process around the office now?
We traditionally rented office space and occupied an office where no one knew where you were. And again, as part of our partnership, we said we needed to do something different and stand out from the crowd. And so rather than being in the downtown office near the courthouse where everyone walks to the courthouse and does whatever they do, people no longer go to the courthouse. Everything's done in the office, and occasionally you show up to a hearing or a trial at a courthouse. So we went out into the community and found just a very highly visible piece of property that was very expensive, that traditionally retail space would be there. We doubled down and spent a bunch of money on a piece of real estate and built what we thought at the time was an office that would be much too big for anything we would ever need. And we're bursting at the seams right now. We're looking for more space, but it's proved to be a great investment for us.
Yeah. Isn't there a hotel or a conference center like right next door, something like that?
Right behind us.
Yeah.
Hotel and a whole big complex right next door. And our original plans were to occupy the first floor, lease out the second floor. And about midway through construction, we realized that we were in need of the second floor. So ripped out the improvements we had done thus far and redesigned it and occupy the whole thing now.
Man. Michael, I truly believe that perception is reality. And so that was a big deal for us to build a really nice office where people could pass by and say, damn, those guys must know what they're doing, right? It worked. That's new building is now in our intake software is labeled as a marketing source, right? Because we get clients, how did you hear about us? TV or web or billboards. And now there's a subcategory, the building, because people tell us all the time, I've drove by this office for years and thought it was big and beautiful. And just as I said, those guys must be good at what they do, and they hire us because of the building. So it's paid off.
Yeah. Let's talk about the sevens. It's all sevens with you guys. Is this like, how did this come about?
Yeah, all sevens all the time. Again, I read John Morgan's book, You Can't Teach Hungry, and I'll encourage all of your listeners to do the same. I think the world of John Morgan. I stalk him. I watch his social media, to read his books. And I mentioned earlier, he said the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. That really took heart. And he said, the first thing you do is go out and get you a vanity phone number. And I'd never heard that term before. So, of course, probably 6 a.m. or 2 a.m., one of them, I'm calling David saying, we got to get a vanity phone number. The 6s were available and the 7s were available. And so we decided against the 6s and went with the 7s in one of our markets, and then quickly realized that we needed to lock them down throughout all of Louisiana. So we did. I'll tell you that the last all 7s area code we bought was significantly more expensive than the first one.
I never dreamed of paying 6 figures for a phone number, but ultimately we purchased multiple numbers, and it's cost us a lot of money, but it's part of the business plan.
Several of those numbers cost us in the 6 figures. One of them, David dialed the number, and this girl answered the phone, and he said, "Is this your cell number?" And she said, "Yeah." He said, "You want to sell it?" She says, "I don't know. I like having all 7s as my phone number." He said, "I'll give you $500. She said, "Deal."
That's true.
Deal. So one
that was the best deal ever.
Well, one's several in the mid 6 figures. One was $500. So
there you go. You guys have parlayed this, the 7th theme into other marketing efforts. If you talk about some of those, because I know it's like it comes up in a lot of the other type of marketing you do, both on TV, social, et cetera.
Yeah, our tagline is all 7s. So, call all 7s. It's kind of become who we are and who we're recognized as. All 7s. It's everywhere we go.
And then we've partnered with professional athletes over the year, some NFL players, and done some marketing with them. Luckily, one of those players wears a number 7 on his jersey, so we've had a marketing campaign off of his jersey and our number, and it's proved to be very effective, and people really embrace it.
If you're open to talking about that, I know that you're working with some professional athletes, particularly some players from the Saints. What led to that? What was that experience like? It seems like it's been a positive for you, especially in the community, but just if you could speak to that.
One of the things, to our credit, that we've done better than most in our industry is thinking outside the box and looking for ways to connect to your audience or your community that others hadn't done. When we first started, it was just stuffy old lawyers and law libraries on TV talking about, I am the greatest lawyer that's ever done this job and you should hire me. And so we went into client testimonials before that was really a big thing. And that was a big deal for us. That worked. And then all of our competitors started doing client testimonials. So we looked for, what else could we do differently? And as part of our networking throughout the country, we met some lawyers that had partnered with an NFL athlete in Kansas City. And we said, we could do that locally. Football is king in Louisiana, in the South. The Saints are loved throughout Louisiana, throughout all of our markets. So our first choice was Drew Brees, and we got the price, and we said, who's next? And then they gave us the second choice, and we got the price, and we're like, who's next? And they're like, well, we have this little rookie that, starting Alvin Kamara, and how much is he? And we'll take him. It was Rookie of the Year that year, and we just really lucked out on that, and it exploded, and that's turned into other Saints players and Saints legends, and just wonderful, wonderful partnerships.
And we've developed friendships with them. They're all great people. You see them as athletes, you see them as stars on given Sunday, but
yeah,
when they take the uniform off and you hang around them a little while, they're just great people to be with, and we've really enjoyed the relationships.
Yeah. I know you guys do a lot in the community and even in the firm and the culture, like, the crawfish boil. I mean, if you talk about some of that stuff.
We make an effort of living our core values, and so every season of the year, I guess we try to participate in some event. One of the big ones is we have an annual crawfish boil for our employees, and it's become quite an event. They get geared up for it. We print T-shirts for it. We have tents set up outside of the office. We bring all of the offices into our main office in Lafayette, and I don't know how many people were there the last time, but last year when we did it, there were probably 200 people that were present, and it's an all-day event. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Work hard, play hard.
Yeah. And again, I mean, just to reflect, you guys, when you started, definitely a smaller firm and in a market where it was probably one of the first to do a lot of traditional advertising, right? So the very, very competitive market, going from, I think, around like 3 lawyers to 30 plus lawyers. Just looking back, what have been some of the biggest lessons?
Delegation has been a huge thing for us to really adapt and learn to let go of some things. We recently hired a COO to come in and take over some of the heavy lifting that David and I were really just getting bogged down with. And he's done a fantastic job of that. We built out our finance team with a CFO and bookkeepers and controllers and just really built a team that makes our firm more like a corporation, or acts like a finely tuned business. And that's made a big difference for us. Bringing people in that excel at certain roles that we were just average at, right? Finance and marketing and operations, we were just average at, and then bring in people who specialize in those areas of business has really been a game-changing experience for us.
And I would add to that broadening your horizons. Traditionally, we look for talent locally. We look for talent, among friends and family that we knew. Sometimes that works out, but we've learned that if you look around this country, there are a lot of really talented people that are wanting to go to work and are willing to go to work, whether it's ideally in our case, locally, but even remote. We found some super talent and have benefited from it. And so one of the things that I think I wish that we had done earlier is not just look within our circle of friends and family for people to work with. Sometimes, like I said, that works great, but for the most part, you set yourself in a box and ultimately create a trap for yourself, because it's hard to let those people go because of the relationships. And when they're not working out, sometimes they just kind of hang around, and it's a disease.
If you think of it as an NFL franchise, we want to draft 5-star players, right? We want A players. We want to give them the tools. You recruit them as 5-star players, and you give them the tools they need to be successful and become A players and have a long-standing relationship with our firm, and everybody wins.
Yeah. So looking ahead, you look ahead into the future, 5 years and beyond. I know you guys, the firm has been expanding. You're expanding into new markets. What are you most excited about?
For me, expanding into new markets and the rapid growth that we've experienced, keep that trend moving ahead, and really just growing our brand across the entire state of Louisiana, servicing many more clients. Relationships that we've made over the years have turned into business ventures with people around the country. Just growing everything, not just our firm, but other business opportunities that approach.
Same here. We're about to move into a new market. That's always exciting. We've done it now a couple of times, so some of the trial and error is behind us. Hopefully it's going to be more smooth than the last. I'm sure there'll be some problems, but the opportunity to go into a new market and have an impact. And in the end, the ultimate goal is to do a great job for our clients. And I'm still very proud that despite our growth, despite our issues and our problems that we've encountered along the way, we still do provide a great product to our clients in the end, and they keep coming back. And I'm very proud of that.
I know that you referenced John's book, You Can't Teach Hungry. He talks about just the different types of individuals, the insatiable ones, which I certainly see you guys as. What's driving you today? Like what keeps that fire burning? Like what drives the growth and expansion? Because the firm's already doing great, already have a lot of offices, already it's come a long way certainly over those years. What keeps you pushing?
Well, if you are growing, you're dying, and we certainly don't want to die. We've built a pretty amazing thing here, and I want to see it to continue to grow. David and I both have children that are lawyers. Maybe, hopefully someday they'll take over the reins and do great things, even better than what David and I ever could have dreamed of. So for me, if you ain't growing, you're dying. So I want to keep going.
And for me, it's I feel no different today than I did when I started my practice by myself. I just have this innate desire to do better and to excel, and whether that results in growth or just expanding the footprint that we currently have, it's just what I enjoy doing. And I'm not one to sit by and not attempt at least to improve my business and improve myself. And that's what drives me.
So I'm curious what a day in the life looks like now for you guys. I know, Digger, you're into the whole longevity stuff, just like I am. Like we're obsessed with this stuff and cold plunges and saunas. But what does a day in the life look like for you at the firm, or just even personally?
So at any given day that could be wildly different. I play politics pretty hard in our state, so I'm usually pretty involved in political activity around our state. A lot of reading, a lot of phone calls, a lot of Zoom messaging, making sure that our laws are on the books of Louisiana are still there in place to protect the people of Louisiana. So that, with some longevity things that you and I have spent a lot of time discussing, I'm really into the cold plunging and the red light therapy and all that good stuff. So a little bit of that. Get to the office. Always interact with the team as you're getting there. I think that's a big deal to both them and to us to let them know how wonderful of a job they do for us and how important they are to us. That goes into reporting to our COO, and our COO giving us updates on the firm activity. Then straight into, we still handle cases. We still try cases. So getting into the weeds on some of that stuff. And then more than ever, marketing, shooting videos and commercials and content and all that good stuff. So that occupies a good bit of our day as well.
Yeah. David, what's your day in life?
I'm an early riser. I get up really early and read something typically and spend a little time reflecting on the day ahead. Do some exercise generally in the morning before I get to work. And like Digger said, once we're at work, it's all hands in. And not much has changed really in my career for the workday. I'm still handling cases. I'm still interacting with clients, interacting with the staff. Aside from the fact that we're busier because we're doing marketing things all the time, it seems, especially at this time of the year, the spring and the summer is when the opportunities arise to really be involved in the community. And we love it, but it's very time consuming. Last weekend, we were involved with something that occupied our weekend. Today's Friday. We'll be somewhere tomorrow doing something else that's going to occupy our weekend. It's just the nature of what we're doing, but I really enjoy doing it. So the day-to-day is pretty much the same. My kids aren't at home anymore. On my time off, I enjoy going out to some property that I own. You've been to it, and whether it's hunting or fishing or just being outside playing with livestock or wildlife, that's really my passion.
I love it. And guys, as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, I'll ask you each this, but what does being a game changer mean to you, Digger?
Michael, we've been friends a long time, and I've listened to almost every episode of your podcast. And when you asked me to be a guest on this podcast, the absolute first thing that came to my mind is, oh my goodness, what am I going to say? What does being a game changer mean to me? So I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and this is what I came up with. So being a game changer means to me, seeing challenges as opportunities, embracing innovation and constantly pursuing the boundaries of what is possible, never following the rules, but rewriting them to create a new playbook for success.
There you go. All right.
And as David will tell you, I never follow the rules.
Yes, that's right. They're all man-made.
That is true.
All rules are man-made.
Made to be broken.
That's right. That's right. David, what about you? What does being a game changer mean to you?
First of all, when you invited us to come and do this podcast, I was really honored because I still think of myself, and I know Digger does as well, as just a small country lawyer. And to be in this seat, knowing that you're going to broadcast this to a nationwide audience and thousands of people will listen to it, I'm in shock and I'm humbled by it. But to be a game changer to me, it just means to never be complacent, to always look for opportunities, to always innovate, and never think that you've arrived, because as soon as you think that you've arrived, you're going to start failing. And so just always keep your eyes open and look for opportunities, and when you see them, jump on them.
I want to give a huge thank you to David and Digger for taking the time to join us today on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on our interview with David Laborde and Digger Earles, see the show notes for this episode in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.